Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are going to take a look at this brand new 2020 Mojo Fun Triceratops. There are actually two different versions of the Triceratops coming out. One, that you can see right here, is kind of an ode to the vintage Triceratops, which I think is extremely cool. And this is actually a re-release of a figure that they had released a while back. This is an older Triceratops that they had released, and I had actually reviewed this figure, but in the alternate color scheme that they had previously. And now they've re-released this more vintage style of a Triceratops here for their 2020 line with a newer paint scheme. But they have also released a newer version that looks very similar to the one that they had released last year. So it'll be really cool to have a companion piece to the previous Triceratops, but also really cool to have an alternate variation of this very cool, very old school, vintage style Triceratops, which if anybody has watched my reviews for a while, knows that I am a huge fan of vintage figures. So that's exactly what I see here with this awesome looking Triceratops. So let's go ahead and get a closer look at it right now. So we have actually looked at the sculpt of this previously, so we won't really go too in depth on the sculpt. I will actually link you guys in the description to the original review of this figure, and you can see that for yourself if you would like a more in-depth look at the sculpt, but we'll just take a look mostly at what's new for the figure. But you can see up here on the head has that very nice, very old school vintage Triceratops look to it. Has a really beautifully painted eye with a nice black coloration. You can see it shine and glisten quite realistically. It looks very legit as far as realistic eye shine. I think they've glossed that to perfection pretty much. You can also see lots of really nice variation of color on the head here. Lots of like a dark gray and then brown throughout, and I really think that's such a really cool ode to the vintage Triceratops, because if you would go back about 50 years or so and then take a look at what we were assuming Triceratops looked like, this is pretty much what you would see. And as far as coloration goes, I really feel like this is also what you would see. It's that very dark, very old school, vintage look to the coloration and sculpt, so they did a great job matching up the coloration as well to the vintage look. But you can really nicely see the browns and this dark gray, it's almost like a bluish gray, transition back and forth from each other in a really natural way, really nicely done, beautifully applied with an airbrush for sure. And then you can see that these kind of spikes that come out along the side of the Triceratops have a very nice light coloration, similar to what you see on the spikes up here on the head that kind of border the entire body here back around to the other side. Really nicely done. It helps to really elaborate those areas by using this light coloration in contrast to the darker coloration here, and I think that was a very nice choice. Also, the really nice spikes up here on the head are really well done, not just in the sculpt department, because you can actually see some really nicely sculpted out detail as far as cracks and crevices go, but also in general by using that lighter coloration, again really bringing those out and making them shine to you and take note of them. And they've also added like this kind of a yellowish mustard type color to the lower part of the horns. As you run back along the rest of the animal, I really feel like this is an absolutely beautiful ode to the vintage stop motion type of a Triceratops. This looks like something that I would have seen in a Harryhausen film or something like that back in the day. As far as the entire body shape goes and the coloration, it is so beautiful looking in my opinion. You've got that same dark gray kind of dark blue mixture that runs along the entire body. You can see that runs down on the legs and everything all throughout the entire body, but it's also been given this really nice dry brushing with a light gray that helps to make all the detail pop so beautifully to you and really helps you to take note of all that. But it again transitions to like a nice brown coloration here in the stomach, and then also on the underbelly of the stomach, and down here on the underbelly of the tail, and a little bit up here onto the back of the thighs. You can see just a little bit there, not too much, but really nice coloration honestly in the figure. And I actually like this one way more than the previous release as far as the paint job goes on this. I did like the original variation of this, but I really like this paint job a lot more because, again, like I said, it really makes me have the feeling of the Triceratops that I would have seen in books and movies growing up. This is pretty much exactly what I would expect, so I really have a very large soft spot for this Triceratops just because it's so incredibly awesome. looking as far as an old school Triceratops goes. I think they did a great job on this and really nailed the overall appearance, paint, sculpt, everything on this is great. I really feel like that was the goal here with this Triceratops from Mojo Fun for their 2020 year, was just to release the very cool vintage look along with the newer, more realistic and up-to-date look, which is what the other one that I actually have not received quite yet does in fact look like. And I really think that was such a cool choice because that is something you don't find from any other company at all. As far as these more mainstream companies go with dinosaur figures, you don't see them making newer, more up-to-date versions and vintage versions, which I really think is a great idea, honestly. That's definitely a big money maker in my opinion, because there are a lot of fans out there of the vintage dinosaur look, and that's exactly what I think Mojo Fun has gone with here for this figure. So extremely large thumbs up to Mojo when it comes to that idea. As far as this Triceratops goes for a size, you are going to see it come in at about 7.5 inches or about 19 centimeters in a length, and for a height about 3.25 inches or about 8.5, maybe close to 9 centimeters for a height. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, Robert Muldoon from the Mattel toy line, along with the Colovosaurus, the Attack Pack version, next to this Triceratops. And now with these guys here next to the Triceratops, you can really see that this Triceratops is a bit smaller than most figures, but honestly I think it's a perfect size, really well done as far as the size goes for this Triceratops, because it's not overly large, it's not overly small, it's kind of like a mid-sized figure, and honestly I think it's perfect for what this is. But for one more comparison, now look at how cool that looks. That is the Mojo Fun Tyrannosaurus Rex, the very vintage and old school version of that, next to the newer Triceratops from Mojo Fun. And I think that aside from size, because the Rex is definitely a bit too small in comparison to the Triceratops, but I think as far as the very cool throwback version of both of these dinosaurs, they look extremely cool next to each other. All I need now is like a volcano going off in the background and maybe a pterosaur flying above, and this would pretty much be a page straight out of a book that I would have read when I was a child. Extremely, extremely cool on the part of Mojo Fun. So this Mojo Fun 2020 Triceratops is awesome. Maybe not the most appealing to some, because a lot of people like their dinosaurs more up to date and more accurate, and that's not what you're going to find here with this Triceratops, because it is a fairly old sculpt on the part of Mojo Fun, and I clearly don't think that they were releasing this to kind of compete with their newer Triceratops as far as accuracy goes. They knew exactly what they were doing, and that was releasing an incredibly awesome tribute to the old school dinosaur, and I am so psyched that they did just that, because this Triceratops is honestly incredibly cool looking. As far as the sculpt, everything on it really screams stop motion dinosaur to me, as far as what I would have seen in the dinosaur films like 1 Million Years BC or When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, Planet of Dinosaurs, all those really cool old dinosaur movies that utilized stop motion imagery, and I really get the same feeling that this is exactly like those as far as how a dinosaur would have looked in those films. So they did a great job, in my opinion, as far as really bringing back that feeling of my childhood in this figure, but also in general on the overall paint application. Everything is really done nicely, really natural looking, beautifully applied, and I think they just absolutely knocked this Triceratops out of the park. Again, if you're not a fan of vintage dinosaurs, if you're a bit younger of a viewer here on the channel and you weren't watching those old awesome dinosaur movies from years gone by, then you may not really have such a huge respect for this figure like I do. But if you are one of those people that are in my age group, and you grew up on those incredibly awesome stop motion films, then you are probably going to love this Triceratops. So I guess it's really just dependent on what your preference is, but me personally, I think it's awesome. So keep checking back to everythingdinosaur.com and DeJenkins.com, because both of those websites will be stocking these figures very soon, so you could purchase this Triceratops as soon as it then comes into stock. I definitely recommend it. If you're a fan of very old school dinosaurs, this Triceratops is a great way to go. So keep checking those websites. Make sure that when it does come into stock, you pick up this cool 2020 Triceratops from Mojo Fun. But before you go doing all that, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.